Hi guys, and welcome to another video. Today we have one more ASRock X570 motherboard. Today we're going to talk basically about the X570M Pro4. This is the micro ATX form factor motherboard, which is going to be quite interesting since we did the Steel Legend and now we're going to do with something more budget friendly. Well, the Steel Legend was actually budget friendly since we're talking about all the specification and everything that it had. Today we're having something for smaller builds. Still it has, I'm looking at the box and I'm seeing stuff that are really appealing when it comes to micro ATX boards, which is quite alright. So let's go with the box. Box is just a standard design. At the back you have interesting features that they always like to point out. For instance, the steel slot for the PCIe Gen 4.0. You have the Polychrome sync, of course, for your RGB. You also have loads of USB ports at the back of the motherboard on the I/O part. 10 power phase design. You have the dual Hyper M.2 slots as well, and XXL aluminum alloy heatsink. And there are a couple of more, but we'll get to that later on. You have two SATA connectors. One is 90 degrees. You have some, these are installing memory. You have loads of M.2, basically three M.2 screws, and you have one standoff for it. You have the DVD for your drivers. You have the quick installation guide as well. Okay, so the one thing that I actually have to admit that I love, and it's just me picking on details, is when this is the second ASRock board that I'm reviewing right now, and they both had at the bottom here some protection. So even though it's in the anti-static bag, it still has an additional protection so the pins don't get, well, they can't get bent at the bottom from the all capacitors and transistors and stuff like that, but still it's okay to mention that as well. So here we go, guys. The motherboard, this is the ASRock X570M Pro4. This is the micro ATX board, and as you can see here, it has, as it says on the box, a huge aluminum alloy heatsink right here, and you have one over here over the M.2. This is the M.2 armor. You have one Hyper M.2, well, basically another one Hyper M.2 slot right here that goes up to 2280 M.2 size. This is the M.2 Wi-Fi, so you can attach it as well here. And basically this is the motherboard that supports AMD Ryzen 2nd generation and 3rd generation processors. Now when it comes to memory, you have 4 slots as usual, which support DDR4 up to 4200 OC. Talking about connecting your graphic card, you have two PCI Express 4.0 x 16, and you have one PCI Express 4.0 x 1 right here. The top PCI Express slot is basically the steel slot right here for a better holding of the graphic card. And next to that we have 8 SATA ports. We have the USB 3.2 generation 1. We have standard 24 ATX power for your motherboard. You have 8-pin EPS at the top of the motherboard. And it's quite appealing that this motherboard has actually 5 connectors for your PWM fans. The one thing that I have to mention right here is I'm really surprised to see a fan connector right here at the corner, and basically this is actually really cool because the rear fan can be directly connected here. So yeah, I mean, very nice. Now let's go back to the I/O part where you have all the connections. You have the HDMI connector, you have the DisplayPort connector, you have the PS2. Then you have 6 USB 3.2 generation 1, USB 3.2 generation 2 type A, type C, RJ45 connection, and you have 3 color-coded 3.5mm jacks for the sound. At the bottom you have, this is interesting because it has the RGB LED connector, 4-pin 12 volts connector, one at the bottom and one at the top of the motherboard, and you have 3.5 volts ARGB, so addressable RGB connector here as well. We have two USB 2.0 ports right here at the bottom of the motherboard, and that's basically it when it comes to the overview of the motherboard. Now let's place this motherboard in a case, in a build, and run some tests. I guess I don't need to turn on the PC since there's no RGB except on the RAMs. So basically we did the tests on the ASRock X570M Pro4. We have the AMD Ryzen 5 3600X. We have two HyperX Fury RGB and, well, Noctua fan NH-U12A and the RX 5700 graphic card. Now the tests are actually really interesting. Now we tested the RAMs on the X570M Pro4, and with the XMP turned on you get really nice boost when it comes to read, write, copy. The latency mostly stays the same, and the L1, L2 and L3 cache go almost the same. Basically the CPU automatically overclocks, but this time comparing to the Steel Legend it didn't go to 4.4 GHz, it's 4.3 GHz. So this is quite interesting. The Cinebench R15 when it comes to single core CPU. So I use the same CPU on the Steel Legend and on the X570M Pro 4, and well, basically the score was the score was up by 1 CB, so that's 1 Cinebench point more. Then we go into CPU, so this is multi-core. This score is lower by 16 Cinebench points, so yeah, lower than on the Steel Legend, so I think this is the difference only here. And then we have the Cinebench R15, this is the OpenGL. It actually got quite a higher score, for 4 points, 4 FPS higher than on the Steel Legend. Also I did this time a bit different. I added the AIDA 64 Gpgpu Benchmark, which benchmarks the CPU and the GPU. You get the CPU, it was running at 4.3 GHz. You can see the megabytes read, write and copy for the memory of the CPU. For the RAMs, you can see the memory read, write and copy for the RAMs. You can see the single precision flops, double precision, 24-bit integer IOPS, 32-bit, 64-bit. Now, as I mentioned, loading XMP and enabling it is quite easy. You just enter your BIOS, you switch to XMP profile 1 or 2 depending on the RAMs, which can be adjusted, and basically that is it. They automatically adjust. You have to restart your PC, that's all. In the BIOS you also have the fan tuning, so it when you press it, it detecting your fan speed, detecting the temperatures and everything. You also have the fantastic tuning, pun intended, and not by me, by ASRock apparently. So it kind of tunes your fans as they should spin. You can also adjust all the fan speed as you wish, because every single fan, if you have the PWM, you can adjust without any problem, without any details. Now the south bridge temperature is 54 and the, let's say, standard speed for the south bridge fan is around 3,000 to 4,000 RPMs. This was something that I wanted to test if it will go even lower, so it was just staying the same. Maybe it was because I had the SSD inside on the M.2 slot, but I kind of doubt it. Maybe it was something else. The temperature of the south bridge is 57 when the fan on the south bridge runs at 4,000 RPMs. You can basically, it's not that loud, it doesn't get on your nerves, but when you put it on the full speed maximum, it lowers the temperature for about 4 to 5 Celsius degrees, and you do get an annoying sound, definitely, without a doubt, because it's going up to 6,000 RPM, so it's a bit different. Now the cool thing, as I mentioned, the motherboard has two connections for the RGB. You have 5 volts, 3-pin connector for the addressable RGB, and you have 4-pin connector for 12 volts standard RGB, LED, fans or whatever. And in BIOS you can adjust everything with the same control as well. It's basically almost the same as on Steel Legend. So you can adjust the LEDs, you can adjust the colors, the RGB madness if you're into it. basically it's very intuitive. The whole BIOS is very consumer friendly, so you just have to read carefully and adjust everything as you wish. There's no difficulty in going through or organizing stuff in the BIOS and checking what to do, or temperatures or fan speeds, or if you don't have a fan control or something like that. Basically this is a decent motherboard if you're trying to go with some higher AMD Ryzen processors like 3600X or 3700X. We're going to test that in another video, but definitely it's a cool motherboard because it has the RGB. You can XMP profile, you can enable XMP profile for RAMs, and it works without a doubt. I had definitely no problem even with HyperX, and I tried with Patriot Viper as well, and Patriot Viper were at 3600 megahertz, which were stable and no problem. The processor is running normally. It automatically overclocks, goes to turbo mode at 4.325 gigahertz, so that's quite alright. The Steel Legend does have 4.4, even slightly above, but as you can see in the Cinebench R15, that there isn't that much difference in the scores except for the GPU, which I don't know what happened there, honestly. I tried to check it out and it didn't make any difference. So you have the Hyper M.2 slots, you have the PCIe Gen 4 slots, you have the XXL aluminum alloy heatsink for your M.2 slot, with a smaller graphic card, with the RX 5700, with this processor, with this motherboard. I actually got on a PUBG really nice scores, with like going from 95 FPS to 120 depending on the zone, and well, depending on where you fall, if you have loads of people and stuff like that. So basically a nice smaller motherboard that supports new generation AMD Ryzen processors, the 3rd generation, and basically everything works perfect. That's all there is to it, guys. So I'll put the links below for the ASRock X570M Pro4 if you want to check it out. I'll put the link also for their website, so you can check more details if I missed anything by any chance. That's all there is to it, guys. Thank you for watching another video with me. See you next time. So until then, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell button because, well, you know, notification for new videos. Thanks and bye bye.